This episode has been brought to you by Manscaped. The new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Go to manscaped.com, use the code GOLTS20 for 20% off plus free shipping today. This week on the Heart of the Gulch YouTube show, we sit down with media personality Neil Orne. In our episode, we talk about life after News 2, his love for fitness and improv, and partnering up with his longtime friend Nikki Burdine for their Not the News podcast. Let's check out the episode. We are in the Heart of the Gulch. I'm your host, Tony Mendoza, and today I'm very excited for my friend. You've seen him at WKRN. You have seen him, well, actually you heard of him on the radio, but that was a long time ago. We got the one and only Neil Orne in the building. What's going on?
Tony, I made it.
Yeah, you did.
I made it.
It took a little while.
I'm in the Heart of the Gulch. It did take a little while.
The irony.
You look great. You're doing great. The show's doing great. I was looking at the people that you're interviewing now, and it's amazing.
Hey,
what
man.
a cross section of this city that you're. And I was like, he must have an open slot because he called me.
Well, you know, when I think about my time with Heart of the Gulch, and I think about how integral WKRN has played in the growth of the show, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to not have you on the show. But more importantly, what you are doing and the evolution that you're going through right now with fitness, with your acting, and obviously you've hit up every other podcast in the world, so you might as well hit up mine too.
I haven't hit up every podcast. I hit a few. I was surprised that anyone even asked me. I was like, what can I say that's
Such a liar.
interesting? I'm not lying.
Well, look, think about all the people that have seen you throughout the years, and it's so funny because I was listening to you at the Twang. Shout out to the boys at the Twang. My gosh, that was hilarious. And what you said was how everything is changing around you, that you have ties, jackets, older than the people that you were working with.
I said that to you in your kitchen. That's like my go-to line right now. It was one of those things. It's like when you have like young journalists coming in, they're all great, right? And when you have those young journalists coming in calling you a legend and you just start feeling old and you start looking at the finish line as opposed to, all the things that you have ahead of you that you want to accomplish. And I just got to a point after 30 years, I was like, the business had just changed and shifted under my feet and wasn't what I got into it for. And I was waiting for an opportunity to come to me. And the door never knocked and the phone never rang. And I thought, I was coming up close to the end of a contract. It was one of those things, I was weighing the pluses and the minuses. And it was just at that point that I was like, if I'm ever going to do it, I'm going to jump now, and with no plan, with no backup, with very little in the bank. And I just said, I've just got to do it now.
Well, that it takes that leap of faith. Now, what I'm very curious to know is you are training right now for a triathlon.
I am. Galveston.
Yes. Now, I was talking to this with the girlfriend. Now, I'm going to paint you this picture of you've been to Destin. Have you been to Galveston yet?
I have not been to Galveston Island. Very flat, which is one of the reasons I chose it.
Have you heard about the smell of Galveston?
I understand it's a working town. Yeah.
Okay, so I want you to look at this idea. I'm going to give you kind of a metaphor, an analogy, all right?
Okay.
So everyone knows Destin, right?
Right.
And how gorgeous the beach is.
Beautiful.
I want you to think of the Gulf of, I guess now it's America, Gulf of Mexico.
Gulf of America.
As life.
Yes.
Okay, we all start in Destin. White sands.
I love where this is going.
Clear
I can
beaches.
feel it.
It feels amazing. You have blue water. And then as you go down to Galveston, you start hitting Lake Charles, where it's starting to get a little bit more industrial.
I've been to Lake Charles.
They're starting to throw stuff in the water. You get outside of Baytown, outside of Houston. Now they're just dumping toxic waste inside the water.
Yep.
So around the Houston area, the Galveston area, that's kind of like life in the middle of the world, right? It's like corporations keep messing with your water and you can't see clearly. And then you get down to by Corpus Christi and now you don't even have a beach anymore. You barely have, it's rocky water and it doesn't get better until you get to San Padre Island where you get beaches again. The water starts to turn blue. So the question is, at what point of the Gulf are you in right now?
My career, I'm starting to see beach again. I'm starting to see I'm out of the murky water, and I'm having the time of my life. I tell everyone I'm busier than I've ever been since I moved to this town in 1995, and I'm making less money. Right? It's one of those things where, but every day I wake up and I have a full plate, and the days go so fast right now, I just can't keep up. I'm just not getting all the stuff I need to get done, and that's fun. That to me has changed, because it used to be I wake up at 1:30 in the morning, I'd go in, I'd do the show, I'd get out after the show, and your body's so tired that it's hard to hold conversations, it's hard to get the motivation to go out, it's hard to just do a lot of things, like even work around the house. So now it's changed. Now I have energy all day long. Now I feel like myself again, and I think I'm scaring a lot of people when they, I want to keep the conversation going now instead of like, hi, how you doing? It's like, oh, how you doing? What are you doing? These long conversations.
Do you like the idea of that analogy of the life of the Gulf of Mexico? How through time, corporations are kind of muddling up your vision, and you can't really see clear anymore in the water. But there's something that happens when you get to a certain point in life where you finally start to see clearer.
Yeah, and it's really a great analogy, right? It's life gets in the way of life, right? The life you chose to do, you're all of a sudden just caught in a routine, and you're doing the same thing over and over again. And if you do the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results over and over again. So the question is that when do you want to see the white sand again? And that's a choice that you have to make inside, right? And I think I waited a long time, but then again, I almost think the timing was perfect. And that's my thought on that has changed over time. And it's now 3 months going on my 4th month being out of that 30-year career. And it's to me, it's just like a brand new beginning. But again, it wasn't because I was just drifting along the shoreline and all of a sudden I was like, oh, there it is. It was because I had to make a decision to change things up.
I love that. And so have you gotten enough, I'm guessing in the places you hang around, where you see people that are retired don't look like you, dude. Like everyone that is retired, I honestly didn't even know your age. I always thought you were in your 40s.
Yeah.
And that's because you're taking care of yourself.
I'm trying to.
Drinking a lot of water, I'm hoping.
Drinking a lot of water. Right now I'm drinking a lot of Tailwind Nutrition. I'm doing a lot of gels right now.
Yeah, what were you eating after? So, for example, you used to go in, and I want to talk a little bit about radio too, but we'll get there in a minute. But you would usually go in 1 a.m. And then you wouldn't leave until 9 a.m.
Probably should have stayed longer, but the fact is that my job had changed on me. I was, I wake up at 1:30. I would do all my research on the show. And then I'd go in, the show is 4 to 7. Then you do 2 hours of Good Morning America. And quite frankly, I'm exhausted at that point. And then the job was changed on me. Instead of doing the 11 o'clock news, I was asked to go out and start working on some story stuff. And I just couldn't get myself to switch gears like that at that time of day. I had the perfect schedule at one point where when I was done at 7 o'clock in the morning with the morning show, I would go over to the YMCA when it was over at Maryland Farms. I would get a good lift in. That was my lunch. And then I'd go back and do the 11, finish strong, and feel good about myself. But I was kind of missing that midday workout. And so I was, by 9 o'clock, Nicole Smith, who was sat right across from me, right? She must have 6 dozen videos of me falling asleep at my desk after the morning show. And I wasn't able to maintain that stuff. I wasn't able to keep that going. So and that was part of the reason. It was just like I wasn't getting that big benefit that I had been getting before. So that was one of the deciding factors of why it was time to move on. And I think, I think both sides were ready at that point, right?
I think that's the best part to put it is like you're able to look, see ahead, and decide on that move to make. And a lot of people that are watching the show, actually, some are older, some are younger, some are trying to make that decision. They're in a crossroads. And you have to come up with the right reasons to why you want to change your life.
You made that decision when you started this show.
Yes, I did. That's right. Wow. You know too much about me at this point.
Well, no, it's one of those things is that when you change direction, it has to be a conscious decision on your part to make that move. Yep. And that was something I was scared to do for a very long time. And on one hand, I was getting the paycheck and I was helping my daughters, and I was doing the things I was supposed to do. But on the other hand, I wasn't getting the full satisfaction that I needed personally from doing that.
Isn't that weird that people do not ever do that? People get, I think it's a blessing and a curse, because if you're able to take your kids to college, you're able to do all these amazing things that impact society in a different way. That's very commendable. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of it where, man, I wish I'd have been a actor, or maybe I'd done improv, put myself in uncomfortable situations outside of financially.
Right.
So it's weird to me that a lot of people don't take that jump.
But I totally get it. I mean, I was 58 when I made that jump. So I was there for a very long period of time. But I have had this amazing chain reaction of people bumping into people around town that have done very similar things to me. And it's you have the most amazing conversations with these people about that transformation that goes on there, and the decisions you have to make. And you have to put aside all your fear. Like get rid of the fear. I'm no longer afraid of anything. Everything that's supposed to happen will fall in place. I didn't leave to do triathlons. I didn't leave to take improv classes. I left and decided to do those things because I thought I needed a reset. First of all, my physical conditioning was squat. I was in bad shape. I was sleeping terrible. I wasn't able to focus. And secondly, on the improv front, that was something that Carrie and I decided to do because we knew we were going to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations, and you grow in those situations. So everyone thinks, oh, you were in front of the camera for 30 years. You could do the improv. No,
it's totally different.
This is totally different.
Totally different.
You're in front of a group of people that are very into this, and you're not, I'm not making one-liners after a story ran. What I'm doing is you have to start from scratch and build the improv.
To add on to that, you were also looked at as the expert in your profession in that time slot. So no one was really judging you. If this is the way you did something, that's how it should be done.
Right.
But now you're in a situation in improv where if you're doing something wrong, you have people that have been in it a lot longer than you that could tell you where you're going astray. But keeping on the same train of thought here, I'm curious to know this. When you were going through everything and making this decision, do you ever ask yourself, I should have done this at this point in my career? Is there a time within that, how long you say, 20 years or 30 years?
I was there 30.
Okay.
I was there 29.
Within those 30, what would have been another great time to make the leap?
That's a great question. And the thing is, I can pick about any point in that career. There were opportunities early on for me to move to other markets, and I would go to the other markets. I would do the interviews. They all went great, but then I would say, what does this market have that Nashville doesn't have? And I kept coming back because I love this city so much, and I just wanted to be a part of the city. So part of the thing that was keeping me in that chair was I don't want to leave Nashville. And that kept me in Nashville.
So what I'm dealing with now.
Right. And you'll find when you start moving around the country and stuff like that, it's like you everything you now compare against this city. And other than the traffic, right? Yeah. Other than the traffic, it's got everything. Tony, I could have left after 10 years. I could have left after 20. I can't really. I think I spent so many years again getting back to the waiting for the next opportunity to come to me that I wanted.
That never came.
And that never came.
Dude, that's awesome though.
Because everyone looked at me like, oh, he's got the job of his life. And I loved it. My 3 hours on the air each day were my favorite 3 hours of the day because I absolutely loved doing that job. It changed a lot. It kind of moved away from what my skill set was. So when I started, it fell right in line with my skill set. It was everything I wanted it to be. And as you go on later in the years, it just got kind of programmed away from me.
Speaking of your favorite 3 hours, right? I would always say it was around the team that you had. Yeah. And I'm just curious to know, does Nexstar just have a certain type of personnel that go to Nexstar at WKRN's owned by Nexstar? And for me, it seems like the vibe of the people that go to Nexstar are very much personalities, great personalities.
I have been very fortunate, and I'm not sure how the Nexstar works. I know there's.
Sounds like a spaceship.
Yeah, right.
Nexstar.
Well, when they used to be called Death Star.
Oh, no.
No, they changed that reputation. No, they hire good people. They hire young go-getters. They hire, and the thing is that these kids they grew up with technology in their hands now, right? So they're so used to being in front of a camera on their phones. They're so used to posting on the social media. They're so used to multitasking. They come in and they hit the ground running. It's really kind of incredible to watch.
But they don't know how to build relationships. That's the issue with millennials, is that we've gotten so used, we forgot what it was like to play in the dirt and go outside, meet friends from 3 blocks down. Nowadays, you go to the gym. Oh, this is a great example. You go to the gym, no one's talking to anyone.
No.
I bet in the 80s, it was completely different. Everyone was friends in the gym. Now we're so fixated on ourselves.
Yep.
We are not able to have those relationships. It takes very unique individuals like yourself, like myself, that thrive on having conversations.
I used to love, like, when you're on the running paths, you'd wave at anyone else who was running or walking by, right? You just get a little finger flip, right? Mm-hmm. It was kind of like growing up and your finger on the pickup truck wheel.
No, it's like a salute. It's like, man, you're killing it like I am.
Jeep wave, finger, it's all that stuff. And it's so frustrating because I've had to train myself not to do that anymore because I started feeling foolish. When you're waving, everyone's like, what is that dude doing? Why? Like,
yeah, it's weird, right? Yeah, I know.
And so, I get it. People, you sit on the machines at the gym and everyone's on their phone looking down and you're like, you going to get up? Can I use the machine? Or are you just going to sit there all day? Or what's going on? And even in the newsroom, when you see what happens, like these guys will go out and do these terrific stories and then they come back in, they don't even watch them. They're just on their phone, like checking their feeds and stuff like that. So I don't know whether TV is their main interest or their phone is their main interest at that point. So
we're all a victim of it. But you know what? We would also be a victim if we didn't take a pause in this episode and thank the sponsors of this episode. We'll be right back with Neil after this. This episode has been brought to you by Manscaped. The new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Go to manscaped.com, use the code GOLTS20 for 20% off plus free shipping today. Back when you were at 2, man, I think your personality was just so infectious. So I knew that you must have came from another creative state. So obviously, was it radio where you got this personality?
It was radio. It was 100% radio. And it's, when you learn first to talk before the camera and the prompter and all that stuff, it helps you a lot. And I think it puts you farther ahead from people that don't get that experience because when you stop talking, what happens? Dead air. You can't have that in radio. And I worked with some wonderful people that have been radio their entire life. And they were the ones that taught me, don't let the microphone and the speaker get in the way of you and the listener. Don't let the camera and the microphone and the TV screen get in the way of you and the viewer. Communicate the way you would communicate, like you and I are talking right now, right? People pick up on that. And if you're so concerned about your delivery, then chances are your delivery is concerning to viewers. Forget about that. And just communicate and just talk. And it's almost like there's 3 people here, right? There's you, me, and the camera, right? Yeah. And so you glance at the camera once in a while, but you're focused on the conversation that you're having. But you don't want to exclude anyone, but you want to make sure that you're engaged in the whole thing. So I think radio did that for me. And there was the story about George Hale, who was he still is a radio legend up in Bangor, Maine. And it was him sitting down one day, and I was, hi, I'm Neil Orne, and welcome to WMCM. And, and he sat me down, we were having a conversation like you and I are, and all of a sudden he went into a commercial break and I realized that conversation was on the air. and his point to me was, that's radio, not what you're doing over there on the FM station with that country stuff. He said, get rid of that. Get rid of the whole voice thing. Stop being enamored by your sound of your voice and your speaker. Get over that. Communicate. Talk about the topic that you're talking about. Focus on that and bring people into the conversation. And I like that. When did you start viewing I think the people that are most successful in any forms of media view things from how the audience looks at it. So when you walk into to the house here and you walk into the studio, I looked at it not from this makes me comfortable. I did everything to make you feel comfortable, even from the music of ZZ Top playing. Everything was there to match your vibes. So I looked at it from my audience point of view. You need Johnny Cash, okay? You needed Johnny Cash, but ZZ Top's good. What I tried to do is especially with my one-liners, the drops in there, the moments of levity. I tried to say what I thought the guy sitting at home on the couch was saying about the story that we just did, right? I tried to not be the person in the back of the class, but I tried to be the guy sitting there watching it who's going, well, that might be the most ridiculous thing. And you come up with lines 100%. Like, you can't get that 2 minutes back. You know, and when you say something, I think that people can relate to, like, I was thinking that, right? I think that's when you start making connections that are a little bit more closer than
because he's like
a normal
me,
thing, right? He's just a guy in there. He's doing this job. I'm not even sure why he has that job, but he says a lot of things that I agree with.
You know, I think of what I've fallen in love with you and the way you tell your stories is that you allow yourself to be humorous, serious, but also at the same time you're open to criticism too.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, where did that come? What was the biggest piece of criticism you had in your career?
Oh gosh. Oh, you know, a lot, right? First of all, you're constantly getting accused of bias. Either you're red or you're blue, and I don't mind that because as long as you get the same amount of people calling you one side or the other, that means like, all right, I'm cutting it down some sort of middle here. I'm not sure what middle is. Second of all, if you can't laugh at yourself, what is the purpose, right? You can't take yourself too seriously. I mean, what are we really doing? I mean, I was horrified to be called an essential worker during COVID. I'm like, there is nothing I do that is essential. No, don't get me wrong. For me, I guess the goal was be serious when you had to be serious. When there was a major news story, be serious. It's important that you take this as seriously as someone who's watching. But for 90% of the time, some of those stories, they just have no impact, right?
Yeah, none.
They're not going to change the way I go about my day. So I think it's okay to drop something in there and, maybe poke fun at a criminal once in a while because they did something stupid.
Exactly.
But it's just take the content for what it is.
Did you ever get people always like question, you have so much potential in this, why aren't you doing something else? I feel like you were told you had so much potential in almost anything you've done. I was,
thank you, but not.
Well, potential isn't always proven.
Right. And I think that, man, that's interesting because I always go about things like I have a chip on my shoulder, right?
We're very similar then.
I was, the first day of lacrosse at the University of Denver, one of the forwards, he knew I wasn't very experienced. He knew I wasn't the royalty that comes into that school. And he put a ball in the center of my chest on a pass that knocked the wind out of me. And I remember that to this day because that was my fuel for my 4 years of college lacrosse. It's like, I'm never going to let that happen again to me. I remember my first week here in Nashville when I was in line at the grocery store and the sweet woman looked at me and said, "You look really familiar." And, I was like, well, I'm on TV. And she looked at me in the most bland way going, "No, that's not it." But I remember that because you have to carry your humility. You're just not that important, right? Mm-hmm. So I think having a chip on your shoulder, but also trying to keep a level head through that whole time was important for me and my development. I have to tell you, when I moved from weather to news, I had a lot of people saying, "You should have stayed in weather. Should have stayed in weather. That was your gold mine. That would have taken you." And I was like, well, "Take me where?"
Yeah, exactly.
I'm where I want to be. Mm-hmm. I'm very happy where I am right now.
Also, man, there's so many questions I want to ask you. And the easiest question that I could ask that the viewers probably ask too is, did you ever think you were going to beat Bob Mueller to the punch of retirement? Yes. You did.
Bob is the Iron Man, right? Yeah, Bob's the Iron Man.
Shout out to you, Bob.
Yeah. Yes, Bob. No, I've always appreciated Bob for what he started in radio too. Like he has that background. We both have the golf bug, the radio bug, the TV bug. There was a lot of things that were very similar to us and about our career path. I just don't think Bob's ever going to leave. So that's an easy question for me to answer right there. It's in his blood, right? And he takes it very seriously, very professionally, and
but he's lighthearted too.
Oh my gosh, out of work, right?
A lot of people, that was actually the number one thing. Once again, shout out to you, Bob. I got asked so many questions once I was done with that interview. Yeah. One with being like, I finally made it here in Nashville to have Bob on. But the other thing was that everyone asked me, what's he like outside of the studio?
Yeah.
And I said, just like when they asked me about you later, what's Neil like outside of the studio? My God, you guys are
people, right?
The nicest people in the world, the people that are willing to do anything for you.
Yeah.
And it's just cool to see you guys outside of a serious light.
Right.
Now, bring it back to your life today.
And Channel 2's always had those types of people. Like that's interesting. But I think back to Lisa Patton. I know Davis Nolan. All these folks, exact same off air as on air, right? Exact same. And when you're around that, you start
picking the bug up,
feeding off of that. And Holt, exact same.
Exactly same way. Now, what's it like when do you ever turn off TV Neil and regular person Neil? Because when I met you outside of Total Wine last year, as much as you were,
we were just walking by. We were just
walking by.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, I can imagine so many people in your life have said, "I've seen you on TV," and then do you immediately go into TV Neil when they say that?
First of all, when someone comes up and recognizes you, it's an honor, right? It's, for me, I used to call it job security, but it's an honor that someone would commit any time to knowing you and learning about you as a broadcaster. So I love that, first of all. I've never had a single problem with anyone saying that I recognize you. And I think anyone in this business that does have a problem with that, you need a different
change
businesses. You're not made for this. But I think Carrie will tell me, and sometimes my girls will tell me that, when someone recognizes you as you're talking to them in public, your voice gets a little louder.
I
right?
know. Lauren says the same thing.
It's like, I'm not trying to do it. If I do it, it's very subconscious, right?
Yes.
So I could see that. And I went from being consumed with news to now I'm kind of so apart from it. It's crazy.
That's what I heard is that, since, leaving, you've started to take a step back.
Yeah.
I agree with what you've been saying. And what a lot of people say is that I think news today is more about the fear and trying to drive people, out of fear.
Yeah.
Now, what's happening though is my generation is doing more podcasts, doing more shows where we're talking in-depth conversations, trying to not spark fear. We're trying to just spark a conversation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you're going, before you made that leap to start your own journey, at what point did you tell yourself you were not going to try to drive fear?
I've been trying to do that my entire career, right? And it was frustrating at times when that was the, information and education, that's what TV news is supposed to be, right? And when you get away from those two things, it's never going to end well at that point. And I think, newspaper gave way to radio gave way to TV, and now TV is giving way to streaming and podcasts and live shows. And so the audience became fractured. And so what happens when your audience becomes fractured? Well, you really start trying to target a certain audience to try to maintain that. And you're holding your grip on that audience, right? And you don't want to let go of that segment of your audience. You want to protect it as much as you can. So you try to cater to one audience right there. And then you start using gadgets or something like that. It just gets to a point where it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Right. Where you don't want to be a part of that aspect. And I think they're realizing that. I feel like they're going to turn a corner on that.
What would you consider as job security in TV outside of because the ratings no longer matter as we talked about.
As I believe. Yeah.
But so what would be considered job security?
Anything I say is my opinion here. Okay. These are things that I feel. And I'm not trying to speak for an industry. I'm not trying to speak for any coworkers I used to have. There's no job security.
You don't think so?
No, the contracts are written by the stations, and it's either take it or leave it type stuff.
Yeah.
So they pretty much have free reign of when you come and when you go. The only way is you can't do it the opposite way.
When do you have leverage? For example, when you're talking about these contracts, because everyone, I'm assuming, that is on TV has a contract. Mm-hmm. At what point in your career do you actually have leverage to maybe loosen up some stuff? Do you ever do you have to be up to Bob's level, I guess? I think
there's a few positions at a TV station now where you actually have some sort of leverage where you have to be that trusted person in that area. I think in weather, if you're a good forecaster, if you're a good communicator there, I think if you're the main anchor on some of these shows, I think you have some leverage, but I feel that going away. I don't think that I wouldn't call it leverage anymore. I would call it a bargaining chip. It's leverage means you're able to move the other side.
Yes.
And I don't think that you can move the other side as much. And it's a weird time.
It's interesting because, I think when my generation coming up as a millennial, in a weird way, I don't want to admit it, but I'm going to admit it, is that we've gotten a lot of things handed to us. Oh, I didn't see you guys there. Hey, if you're enjoying the content that we provide, please consider subscribing to our Heart of the Gulch YouTube show. Hit the subscribe button that's right in front of you, or hit the Heart of the Gulch logo over here in the corner. And of course, like magic, hit the recommended subscribe button that's over here in the banner. We would love to have you guys here at the Heart of the Gulch YouTube channel. And let's get you back onto that interview right now. We've gotten a lot of things handed to us.
Right.
So we have this perception in our head when we sign a job that we have some type of leverage, when in reality, we do not at all.
Sure.
And I would think a lot of companies like news stations, whatever news station, kind of laugh at you a little bit.
Right.
It's like, who do you think you are coming into here and trying to dictate what you can do?
But name an industry now where people do have leverage like that. Now I remember when my dad ran TV stations, right? Mm-hmm. These anchors had so much leverage. I mean, it was, they could.
Because of the audience that they built?
There were 3 stations in each town. You had everyone watching, and if someone liked an anchor and their numbers were good, well, they would go to the station down the street. So my dad was in New Haven. One would go to Hartford, then come back, and they'd move around, and they were making these ridiculous salaries because where they would move, the audience would move, and it was measurable. That's not measurable anymore. So when you can't, if I had gone to another morning show, I don't even think the ratings would have shown any kind of movement. So where's the leverage in that? It's just that the audience has become so fractured. And unfortunately, this has killed TV news because everything that we hung our hat on as being the source for is now going to this. Mm-hmm. And when you start taking away those powers, then what leverage does a TV station have on their audience? You're looking at leverage on both sides of the equation here. And that's why I don't think I'd want to be in news management right now, because I think it'd be a very difficult balancing act to try to, one, you're constantly having your budget slashed right now. Mm-hmm. 2, you have to fill these positions. You're trying to you're pulling people in right now. You're trying to get people to apply. Like, try to get someone to apply for a morning producer position right now.
It's almost to the point now where these positions aren't as valued as they once were.
Right.
So they're trying to do anything about that. Now, breaking from the news cycle real quick, just going to you, Neil, what's it been like to truly start to feel empowered in improv and going into business, focusing more on your Airbnb? Shout out to that.
Yeah, right.
How's that like?
Well, the Airbnb always has a good story, right?
Yeah, seriously.
And I think the city gave out a lot of licenses, and I think the market took a hit just because fewer people were using them. So I think the market, just like the real estate market, became oversaturated with agents and oversaturated with
especially here in Nashville,
right? With short-term rental licenses. And I think a lot of them have sat empty during the winter. Like, mine sat empty for 4 months this winter. Do you know what that's like, paying a $5,000 note for 4 months? It's like, it's terrifying. You're opening your app constantly, like, where are the reservations? What's happening? Mm-hmm. So the Airbnb has taught me to be patient, first of all. I'm very customer service oriented, so I'm going for repeat customers at my Airbnb. It's been a good challenge just to kind of make sure that the numbers work out. It's a good tax write-off at times when it's not being rented. But I love that. I'm doing a whole bunch of different things like we were talking about before. I'm busy at a lot of different things that aren't making money, But I feel like they're all starting to get up to the starting line right now, right? We're pushing them all forward at this point. Doing a lot of fun stuff, being on set with a Lifetime movie. That's I never did that before. That's a lot of fun.
Even
right?
if it's only 2 words, right?
Yeah. Completing an improv class. I never did that before. But a lot of fun. So I'm just, right now I'm just kind of building back the tool chest, right? You lose confidence in yourself after you leave a job for 29 years. You walk out that door. I walked out the final time and I'm like, what skills do I actually have? Well, I can read moving words in front of my face. But then you realize I have a lot more than that.
Well,
right? And then it takes time to realize that.
That's wild that you say that, because I think a lot of us go into these positions, right? For example, I won't say the company I used to work for, but it was very heavy into recruiting. I found my way into recruiting.
Yeah.
And I left that job and starting Heart of the Gulch. But I left that job knowing, like, what skills do I actually have from that job? How did I even get promoted to that position? Well, I was just really good at that one thing.
You were really good at it.
I had to take a leave.
Right.
I had to take a leave. Luckily, they honored everything.
Yeah.
I wasn't good at that job.
Okay.
This is what I'm very good at. It's it's what I love to do.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, I've gained more skills in my entire life from this than I ever did at that old company that I used to work for.
Yeah.
But they taught me how to bring in attention to detail.
Right.
So I'm guessing you're going to be on that same path where you're going to learn more about yourself in this next wave of life. But what are the skills that, the old company did for you?
Well, what you're doing right now, interviewing while you're listening to what I'm saying, but also trying to come up with a way to keep the conversation moving forward. It's not an easy skill. It's not something that you're born with for the most part. You kind of have to acquire it over time. And I'm sure your interviews now are a little bit different than your interviews when you first started out, right?
100%.
And you were probably writing out tons of questions, and you were probably doing different stuff, prepping different ways.
Different ways.
And you do prep, and it shows in the questions that you ask, and that's important for this. But I was doing everything I could to find a path away from cameras and microphones. And I sat down with a buddy of mine over in West Nashville, owns a car lot over there, Joe Agee. And Joe was like, I sell cars. I'm good at it. I'm comfortable doing it. I like helping people get cars. He said, you're good in front of a camera. You're good at talking. You're good at interviewing people. He's like, kind of stick with what you came to the table with. Right. He's like, I wouldn't hire you as a car salesman right now because I'm afraid you'd be giving away my cars. Right. Because I'd listen to a sob story about why they were getting a new car. I'd be like, oh God, we got to get you in a car.
Yeah, let me take all the commission out of this.
But I do like this because when you can sit down and have a conversation with someone versus a 1 minute and 20-second story about someone, that changes the whole game. It changes the complexity of the topics they talk about. It changes the way that you think about different things. So yeah, I think I will end up in a situation like this, and you and I will hate each other because we're competitors.
No,
that's not true.
No, I think
you'd actually be one of my first guests, right?
Oh, I appreciate that.
Right?
Yeah, I think what you have is you have found it's kind of weird. I feel like I'm looking at myself in a couple of years. I won't say how many years, but a couple of years.
The chicken neck and a few
Man,
things.
You look amazing. Have you had people think that you're like 40 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, you look like you're literally 40 years old.
I appreciate it.
And but like I said, it's kind of weird looking at you because you are literally in the place that I want to be because you're staying here in Nashville. Yep. The community means everything to you.
Everything.
And the community responds to you. Yeah. And me, it's like I'm starting the journey where I hope to be at one day, where I'm just happy to be in this town.
Yeah.
It's scary to know that like money could be the only reason what takes me away from Nashville.
See that I hate that for you. First of all, you've been doing this, 3 years?
Yes.
Okay. I can tell you that where you are 3 years into this versus where I was 3 years into television news, I think I would say you're farther ahead of where I was at that point, just because of the skills that you're developing doing this. What I would say is I would do everything I could in your power to take the focus off the money and keep doing what you love where you love to do it, it will come. And I think you just have to, for me, once I started taking the focus off money and the bills and the mortgages I have to pay, all of a sudden you start seeing clearer the path forward. So, Harley Gulch, what do we need? 2 or 3 more sponsors here. If you're watching this and you like this content, sponsor the show. He's got to pay a mortgage. But seriously, but this is where the ad dollars are moving. So it's not like you're in a place where they're not going to find you.
That's a good point.
You're in a place where they are going to find you. You just have to make sure that you're found. And I think, first of all, your content's wonderful. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting here. I watched a lot of your show. I was sitting in Leaper's Fork this morning at a 3-hour ride ahead of me. And I was at the diner down there. And I was watching some of your stuff. And I was like, this is fascinating. Like, it's really kind of, you're doing great stuff. And the reward's coming. And because you're in the right place, you're at the right time. And now it's time to just kind of start doing that. Do you ask people to sponsor the?
So, wow, man, you're making. I can't let these. Shout out to the sponsor Manscaped that takes care of the lights. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And but definitely, here's the thing, and this is what you're gonna find out when you are going to your next journey. And I love that Nashville is gonna be a part of that journey.
Yeah.
Is that these companies, it's all about who you have.
Right.
It's about, I stopped worrying about the views once I hit like 4 million.
Yeah.
Shout out to that.
4 million.
Yeah, 4 million.
Once I hit 4 million, I stopped worrying about that. It almost made me knock the picture down, all right?
I stopped thinking about it because at this point, what am I working for? Another million? Another 5 million? No, I don't care about that. What I'm looking for now is retention.
Yeah.
So when you're watching this video, if you made it 42 minutes in this conversation, thank you so freaking much, because you're the reason why I'm working so hard.
Right.
So I'm looking for
Most
retention.
podcasts don't get, 5 minutes?
I know, and the fact that I get 100% is crazy.
So you're doubling already what's the average, and that puts you in a pretty elite crowd right now to move forward.
And so to bring it back to sponsorship.
Yes.
Sponsorship in a weird way it's about who you brought on, and it's about, do you have retention?
Yeah.
And if you have those 3 things, you'll be fine. But also I believe in you, and I know that you can sell yourself. You can easily make a 10-minute conversation seem like 3 minutes. And that's actually goes a long way in all media.
Yeah. Right.
At what point did you start to feel that Nashville accepted you?
The 98 tornado was pretty interesting. We had the stadium being built over on the East Bank. We had, we started having live cameras all over the town. I was on the air for 17 hours that day. We were on CNN. We were broadcast everywhere that day. It was an important day. It was one of those things where it was 3:45 in the morning. We go on at 4:00. My co-anchor at the time, she looks over at the radar because I was busy making maps, and she's kind of, so Victoria Hansen was kind of just, she's like, what? And she points and she's like, that's an odd looking storm. It was over by Camden, and it was a true hook echo in the most classic sense.
Explain what a hook echo is.
It's a tornado signature, okay? It's when the rain starts wrapping around the inside of a storm, a core of a storm, it will produce this kind of, apostrophe or almost a C shape if it's really defined. It's kind of hard to pick out, but these were clear as day at 3:45 in the morning. So we jumped on the air, and 17 hours later, we were still going. And it was wave after wave after wave. And everyone that day was fixed on the TV and what was going on. And it was one of those things where you'd see a tornado go over one area, our live crew would rush in afterward, and you'd see the damage, right? So it was almost like it was boots on the ground immediately, and that ground justification that you rarely get in these situations over and over and over again. And I think after that, first of all, I felt my job changed. I felt a much bigger responsibility in what I was doing at that time. But secondly, I think there was just this kind of bonding that happened with people that that lived in the area. And I think it's a lot of those, people love the lighter side of what I did, but I think it was the big news events that kind of make a different bond,
what would you say is, you know, one of the most untalked about stories that you ever covered that you felt like you had the best, that you did your absolute best on it, that no one talks about?
You know, gosh, the Christmas morning bombing was, you know, I wasn't working that morning. I had walked outside and I heard this, and I live in Radnor Lake, far from it. And I heard this dull thud. I never heard it before. And I was like, that is just wrong. So I went and woke up the girls and said, we're going to have Christmas a little bit later. Everything's fine. And I went to work. My hair was sticking straight up. And I didn't look like, I looked like I wasn't working that day. But the severity of it, the harshness of it, the
Crazy.
timing of it, it was so shocking and so absurd that I thought we did some pretty terrific coverage of that, but then it just fell off the radar, right? I still don't have the answers I needed as to what the motivation of this individual was. And it was at such a critical time. Remember, the election stuff was going on, and all these conspiracy theories were floating around out there. And then this guy in an RV with his dog loaded with fertilizer and dynamite goes in and blows up the AT&T building. And then they said it's because he had cancer and his dad used to work there. And what? So there was stuff like that. I think just about all these big stories that happen, you're always left with questions. You're always wondering why we left that story where we left it. You know, why didn't we keep pursuing it? So, but that one, you know, and I know, Tony, what happens? I leave here and I'll think on the way home, no, that's not the story. And I'll think of 1,000. It's just one of those things over 29 years, all the different things that happen, you can apply that thought pattern to a lot of those stories right there. It's just kind of what mood I'm in at what moment. I mean, I remember I was asked once, it was the story that had the impact was Katrina. You know, we were down there. We saw the suffering. We saw the people under the I-10 bridge. We saw bodies. You know, I hadn't seen bodies before. And we saw that. And we saw the desperation. But worst part of that is you realize how quickly civilization turns into chaos and people are out for themselves after you lose communication with each other. The infrastructure falls apart like that.
Wow.
It's not a day, 2 days, a week. It's instantaneous that all of a sudden people start doing the survival thing. And it's pretty chaotic and it's quite frightening.
It might cut off, so just be careful.
What is one thing you miss and one thing you don't miss about waking up early before going on the news?
Okay. That's a really good question. I miss my friends, your coworkers. When all of a sudden that disappears, it's a huge support system in your life that just disappears. And it's not like we're texting each other every single day. It just kind of goes away, right?
Yeah.
And that was, I didn't expect it to be that harsh for me personally to miss those relationships. But, you know, once you leave a place, I firmly believe you have to leave. You can't like take a step out and keep one foot in.
No Michael Jordan
No
moment.
Michael Jordan stuff like again, my 3 hours on the air, I never disappointed me. I was always, my favorite hour was from 4 to 5 a.m.
Yep.
Period. So I missed the 4 to 5 a.m. and I miss my coworkers to keep that answer short.
Now, what do you not miss about it?
I don't miss all the other stuff that goes on outside the show. I think there was
Corporate and just regular.
Yeah, just, you know, lots of meetings and stuff like that, and I didn't always feel like they were necessary. You know, yeah, it's hard to kind of put my finger on any single thing. It was one of those things. I always say this is you know, the pros and cons there, and when you wake up at 1:30 in the morning, your pros have got to be strong. They got to be solid. And when all of a sudden you start second guessing those pros, right? All of a sudden the cons start creeping up right there.
And then it takes over.
And then it feels like, you know, it feels like you're not an employee, but you're a student at a daycare center, right? And when you're treated like that, like I grew up in a time where if news was happening, it didn't matter if it was your day off.
Yeah, you got to be there.
You went in. There wasn't a question about it. And if you looked around the newsroom and someone was missing, it was noticed. And that kind of has gone away, right? Yeah. And you don't feel that kind of energy anymore.
Camaraderie as well.
Yeah, the energy.
All right, here, let's go to another question here.
Neil, if you could be any fictional news character, who would you be and why?
Fictional.
Fictional news character.
Not a real
news
character. And is it going to be Ron Burgundy? Is he going to say Ron Burgundy? Is he going to say that? No, it's going to be the Mary Tyler Moore show. It was Ed Grant. I would love to be the Ed Grant of the newsroom, right? He was the boss that you wanted in TV news.
Mm-hmm.
He was the empathetic boss that understood what your emotions were. And most people watching this have no idea Google him.
It'll be shown
Google
underneath.
Ed Grant.
While you're saying this, it's actually going to be underneath. So don't worry. They'll see who he is.
But he also took a very ethical approach to the business, and he was just that character. So I would go with him right now.
All right, let's go to the last question here I got.
Interviews you've done, which one has been the most awkward?
Most awkward interview.
Oh man. They usually came on the red carpet during the CMAs because it didn't matter how much you prepped. First of all, the people you prepped for didn't come through the line. And the people you didn't prep for,
always stop
by. And you have to understand too, and you probably know this, these country stars don't look the same as they do in person as they do on the screen. So I did get Hall & Oates confused once. That was really dumb. I did have Tanya Tucker pinch me in a place that, that was actually fun. That wasn't we did have Florida Georgia Line come up behind us, and we didn't even know where they were standing there. And they turned around. Those two guys, very handsome dudes, right? And I didn't recognize it first, right? Because they just look so different in person.
Who was someone that you were so surprised of, a prominent figure that recognized you and knew who you were?
Oh my gosh. This was kind of the thing that you text everyone at home about there when you walk up the governor and the governor says, Marie and I watch you in the mornings, and you're like, what? Okay. When someone like, Alan Jackson comes up to you and, he introduces himself to you, Neil, I'm Alan. And you're like, no, you don't do that, Alan. It never got old. It always amazed me. Luke Bryan, used to, maybe still does, but he used to watch the show too. And so, and I used to have a lot of people that would text me while I was on the air, and Nikki would sit there and look at my phone, and she'd be like, "Are you kidding me? Really? They're texting you now?" And I'm like,
It's interesting because there are in Nashville, because we're in a city filled with so many legendary people.
Yeah.
And Nikki being one of them. Shout out to Nikki.
Yep.
Love you, Nikki. What's it like when you're in these rooms? Because you're in a lot of these rooms that majority of Nashvillians are not in.
Yeah.
And you're not a musician. You're a personality,
right.
And you're a person that's been in this, in Nashville for a long time. You're a prominent figure here.
Yeah.
So what's it like to be in these rooms with these amazing events?
First of all, you have to appreciate every moment, saying not everyone has this front row seat. And I think I did, because it never got lost on me, the fact that, I'm in the green room, with these people and
Jelly Roll, you name it.
Yeah. And all these folks. And, no, I always felt the big inferior complex at that point, because these people are so talented, right? Mm-hmm. You live in a city where, I was getting my chimney redone, and he saw my Martin guitar sitting next to the chimney. He's like, "Do you mind?" And he picks it up and just starts tearing the thing to shreds. And I'm like, "What? That guitar has never sounded like that." Mm-hmm. But so then you realize what it takes in this city to reach that level is, first of all, talent out the gazoo. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give up on my dream
mindset.
Listen to that. Mm-hmm. And third, a little bit of luck, right? And it when you meet someone like Carly Pierce, she truly was here 10 years before she was even recognized. She used to come do the pre-CMA stuff with me at the convention center. And I remember the first time I met her, she had a big bandage on her guitar finger. I was like, what's going on? She's like, "Well, I cut my finger with a knife last night. I was like, you didn't have to go do this. But she said yes to everything, right? For 10 years, never gave up, probably thought about going home a few times. Kenny Chesney, when he first got to this town, never said no to anything, right? And they become the biggest stars in the industry, and now they can say no to everything. It's so I'm always, so you ask me that question, and I say, it was never lost on me how important these people were in my life and the city's life. Personally.
Well, so speaking of which, I'm going to leave you with my last two questions. And I know there's a lot of people out here that have a lot of questions to ask you.
Okay.
And it's important because I think you're a figurehead in this city. You are a person that, and I won't give you the big L word, right? But I'll definitely say that you are a person that people truly miss on TV.
Well, I appreciate it.
And there are definitely going to be some outlets that we're going to see you in. Yeah. And I'm excited to see that. So, but I'm going to go to my question I ask every episode, and it has to do with imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
We all go through imposter syndrome.
Absolutely.
Now, what were your techniques to not let the imposter syndrome break you down? And what pieces of advice can you give someone right now who wants to do the same thing that you did or something around there and not let it stop them?
Just never not appreciate an opportunity. These opportunities, you have a chance to seize them, and you have to put your mindset in the fact that I'm going to seize this opportunity. And I go back to my first day at Channel 2, and I was nervous and I couldn't talk, and Ann Holt came up to me, put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You're here for a reason." And that changed everything for me, right? When someone says you're here for a reason, all of a sudden you feel like I am here for a reason. She's right. So first, know the situation you're in. You're there for a reason. Second of all, look at it as an opportunity, and it's an opportunity you may never get again, and it's an opportunity that a lot of people will never get, and seize that. Use that as fuel, right? Isn't that the first few times I spoke in front, being in TV, you speak in front of a few people in the studio. You're not speaking to thousands and thousands of people. And then all of a sudden you get invited to an event to host it, and all of a sudden there's thousands and thousands of eyeballs staring at you, and you are scared to death. Mm-hmm. And those are the moments you have to say, this is the opportunity, and I am not going to let this pass, and I am going to ace this test. And you just have, if you have that mindset that nothing's going to stop me, if you focus on the fear, if you focus on the tension, if you focus on the moment,
it'll never work.
You're done.
Yeah, 100%.
You gave up on yourself before you had a chance.
Exactly. That is, that's the coolest part about it. And that's actually when you go into that next phase, which, like I said, we know what the next phase is. We're just not telling you. But the thing is, though, yeah, you can't tell you. But so what are you looking forward to in 2025 this year, and by going into the next season of, 2026? What are you looking forward to this year?
Well, Carrie's opening up her first business is K-Butte is what it's called. And we've been working very hard at getting that open. And hopefully by the time this airs, she will be open. I say we, but it's she. She's the business. That's one thing. Second of all, some of the different projects that I told you about there. Well, Nikki and I had that Not the News podcast before COVID hit, right? And we're going to probably revive that. And I'm looking forward to doing that. She was a gem to work with for so many years, and the fact that we get to continue that is very exciting to me. And then the third thing is, my oldest is going to college this year. Can't believe it.
Wow, that's awesome.
Getting her to college. My youngest is a student driver now, so getting her safe behind the wheel.
She's not driving your car, is she?
They can drive my car anytime they want.
Okay.
My oldest takes it. She's like, "Dad, here, take the Jeep, and I'm going to take your car for the day." And I'm fine with that. You know what I mean?
You're a good man.
Well, so far so good.
Well, okay. So the way that we're going to close out the episode, typically we do something called Walk the Line, but since this is going to be a true podcast episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look straight into that camera right there, and I'm going to say, "Hey, my name is Tony Mendoza. That's Neil Orne. We're still here in the heart of the Gulch, and I will see you guys next time. See y'all later." Boom. Stay right there.
Awesome.
And I will